Beyond Reason Radio.
So I just have to start off by saying something pretty controversial, but I'm going to stand by it. Here it is. I thank God that Governor DeSantis, Ron DeSantis, is our governor right now. And frankly, I thank God that President Trump is our president right now. Believe it or not. Well, let me just put it this way. Not necessarily. I thank God that some of these Democrats out there are not our president right now. I'll get into that in just a moment. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. We're on until 8 p.m. tonight right here on News Radio WFLA Orlando. For some reason, the Facebook Live feed is not working. You're changed
kidding.
Everything. They changed everything on Facebook, Tom Benson, and I'm trying to click on things, and it's
their new format, huh?
Yeah, I have to figure it out later. But before we get to any of the stuff I want to talk about, Rory O'Neill from the newsroom is, I know, it's like, I'm a little starstruck at the moment here.
Get to it, because this is costing you by the minute.
We wanted to get an update for the people listening right now on what happened in the state of Florida and here locally in Central Florida, dealing with coronavirus. There's updates every minute.
Right. Oh, where to start? Well, sir, I guess we'll start with the number, which they gave out earlier today. We're about 1,400 cases in the state. We know this number is going to climb because testing is increasing. 18 fatalities blamed on this. The governor today really just doubling down, I'd say tripling down, on not issuing a statewide lockdown. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of pressure for him to do it. A lot of people say the state should be on lockdown. He is refusing to do it, says that's a blunt instrument. Yeah, and says there's a lot of unintended consequences that go with it. So
that's something I'm going to talk about in a little bit because I actually agree with them on that. But go ahead.
Yeah, and then but locally, the Orange County Mayor Jerry Deming said we will go into our own sort of lockdown in Orange County starting Thursday night at 11. A stay-at-home order is being issued effective 11 o'clock on Thursday night. There are exceptions, so if you're going to get food, if you're going to see a doctor or go to the pharmacy, you are allowed to do that, but only. And
we have our cool FEMA badges here at iHeartMedia. Did you get one?
I don't know if we have Photoshop or a FEMA badge. I don't know how official those things are.
It says Emergency Response Team, Rory.
Okay. It doesn't say FEMA, but that's. I don't see the FEMA logo.
When I got here, someone was walking out the building, and he says, I have my FEMA badge, so I'm allowed to walk outside. And I said, oh, good. I was going to tell. I was going to tell on you, but now I won't.
We do have the FEMA letter. That's actually, that one I think is better, but it says to whom it may concern.
Explain what that means, though, what a lockdown order actually means.
Basically, because businesses are closed, they don't. It's really like a curfew, and they don't. And anyone who would be out would otherwise be considered a troublemaker. So they want to keep people into their homes, also stopping the spread of any possible disease.
Gotcha.
So this is really a preventive move to say, all right, look, if you're out, then you're just causing trouble, and we're going to round you up. Mm-hmm. The governor has said these people violate these all the time. And they're a waste of paper. In Miami-Dade County, the mayor down there also issuing a similar decree, but he says you can't congregate of peak crowds of 10 or more anywhere. Even family members have to stay 6 feet apart when outside. And he says he's issuing that rule for restaurants or they're closed, but supermarkets and stores, even gas stations. He said everyone must maintain the proper social distancing.
The supermarket thing's going to be real tough. I'm afraid of more panic buying now because of orders like that.
Well, it's funny. I was at Trader Joe's, and I sort of enjoyed the fact that only 20 of us were allowed inside because normally it's 2,000 people inside.
Could you find a place to park?
I could walk over. So that was
I was about to say, usually there's no parking there.
Well, and actually, they blocked off half the parking lot so people could stand in line socially, 8 feet apart, like they were all radioactive, and took up the whole parking lot. Took up the whole parking lot waiting to get inside. But are
there any orders in Seminole County?
No, we haven't gotten that yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if that follows. Usually when one county does it, the neighboring start to do it. So I wouldn't be surprised. And again, this is what we're supposed to be doing anyway. It's limiting your time. And unless you have a job that requires you to be there on site, they really want you to telework if possible.
Yeah. Rory O'Neill from the newsroom and from Florida's News Network. Thank you so much for coming on and updating us on all the latest, because definitely a lot of important information out there. So there you have it. more stay-at-home orders in the state of Florida, including Orange County. By the way, this is something that is affecting every single American, I think. Really. And for those who think that I'm not being affected by this, trust me, I'm being affected by this. I have friends, family members, loved ones who are out of work. And I'm not saying they're working from home. I'm saying they're out of work right now, not going to get paid through this. And this is the thing, and this is why I started out the show by saying I thank God that DeSantis is our governor and that Trump is our president. Because, frankly, I've seen too much of a rush to shut things down. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't shut things down in certain situations. I'm not saying that at all. But there should be a reluctance to do that. Let's put it that way. There should be a reluctance to do that because this is affecting the economy, and the economy is people. It's our lives. We kind of think of the economy as this like abstract thing out there that we just study and try to get a handle on. No, it's your livelihood. It's your purpose in some situations. Sometimes it's just a job, but that's how you get an income so you can take care of your family, so you can eat, so you can have toilet paper. And we are shutting things down so quickly without any word on how long this is going to last. And we're saying, well, we have to do it because who said it recently? I think there was a couple of people that said, even if this saves one life, it's worth it. But no, that doesn't make any sense. We don't take that into consideration with anything else in our country. Nothing else in our country do we look at it that way. When it comes to traveling, when it comes to driving, when it comes to other diseases, we don't take that into consideration. You have to be realistic about this. You have to look at the pros and cons of this. You just have to. And I feel like in some situations, especially with the left, I went on Twitter today. That was my first mistake, Tom Benson. I went on Twitter. And I looked at what some of the people on the left are saying.
Oh, geez.
For one, they're blasting Trump because he promoted a possible treatment, and he said he was hopeful about that. Oh, it's a potentially dangerous drug. How could he promote that? Almost all prescriptions can be potentially dangerous. Almost all of them. That's why when you see a commercial on TV for a prescription drug, they usually have a long list of side effects. They can all be potentially dangerous. So we're going to not have any prescription drugs now because, well, it could be potentially dangerous. How could he do this? Because there's been some tests around the world that have showed some promising results with that. We had Dr. K on the morning show today, and he looked at a very good peer-reviewed study that showed that maybe this could work and it would be a good thing, and Trump wants to make sure we have it and wants to be hopeful, and he's getting blasted for it. I don't understand this. I don't get what the thinking is. But before we get into this, I mentioned that I thank God for Governor Ron DeSantis. Let's play the first cut I have up there of DeSantis. This was him yesterday talking once again, and Rory O'Neill just kind of mentioned this a little bit, but I wanted to play this. This is him saying why he is not in favor of, do you see it up there? It should be the first cut, DeSantis. It's not there? Okay, DeSantis, him yesterday saying why he does not want a statewide lockdown.
This is not a virus that's impacting every corner of the state. We have 20 counties that have 0 cases at all, and we have about 25 counties that really have only a few cases. Some have 2, some have 5, some have 7. You do have an outbreak in Miami-Dade and Broward counties, but those are different from places like Northwest Florida. And so if you're looking at that, somebody who has a job in a place where there's no positive test anywhere in the county, the chance of transmission is probably very, very small there. Much different calculation than if you're in Miami or Broward. So I think it would be inadvisable to consign that person to real hardship if we honestly don't believe that it would advance the public health. It's also not clear to me that doing a massive shutdown of the entire state would even work. I think you're seeing in some of the states that have done this, there's really been huge non-compliance.
So, I mean, is he wrong there? No, he's exactly right. I'm really nervous about all this. I'm not going to lie. I'm very, very nervous about this because I'm already seeing panic buying. My fiance went to Publix today and she couldn't believe how many items they're out of. And it's because of panic buying. Now, why are people panic buying? Because you constantly have governors and people in the media say, we need to lock everything down right now. If you're constantly hearing that all over the media, everyone's going to go out and panic buy. And that's the last thing people should be doing. People are panicked right now. And this kind of stuff is making it worse. And our economy is collapsing. And that's not an exaggeration. It's collapsing and cannot last too long under these conditions. I said maybe a month. But from what I'm hearing from like maybe the airlines, I don't think it can last even that long. And of course, the Democrats are using this to promote a socialist agenda. Some Democrats anyways, and those on the left. We're going to get into that later on. What's going on in Congress right now. You want to talk about beyond reason. It really is. Now, in terms of a nationwide shutdown, there are some people calling for that. But Vice President Mike Pence, he did a virtual town hall on Fox News earlier today, and he said, no, we're not considering that at this time.
At no point has the White House Coronavirus Task Force discussed what some people call a nationwide lockdown, or as you described, as a stay-at-home order. What we've done is publish the president's coronavirus guidelines. I've got them right here, and I recommend them to everybody's attention. It's the 15 days to slow the spread. This is what we believe every American should be doing during what remains of the next week or so, because we think we have the chance to significantly reduce the spread of the coronavirus and the threat that it presents to the most vulnerable among us. States like California and Illinois and, of course, New York and elsewhere have taken strong measures. President Trump and I and our team fully support the decisions by your state and local officials that may be stronger than this. But we believe this is the right prescription across the board to slow the spread.
I think he's right. And Trump is getting blasted today for saying we need to open things up. In fact, well, you know what? We'll get to it after the break because I want to talk about how Trump is. It's just what I'm seeing in response to all this. It's beyond reason. It really is. And we're also going to talk about how some of the Democrats, their eagerness to shut things down, their eagerness to deploy the military, their eagerness to basically nationalize industries frightens me. It really does. I don't want these people in power in a crisis because, like I mentioned 2 weeks ago, and people are catching up with me now, they're not letting this crisis go to waste. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Safe space for conservative thought, not for political correctness. Yaffee is back right now.
So I put out this post, this promo poster on my social media. And you can like the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page. You can follow me on Twitter at Michael Yaffee or Instagram at Michael Yaffee. And I put up and it said how the Democrats are using the crisis to try to promote socialism. And some people blasted me for that. Oh, Trump's promoting socialism, too, with his bailout checks and blah-bitty-blah-bitty-blah. It's something I talked about last week. It's not the same thing. I'll get to that in a moment. By the way, Tom Benson is here. I never really got a chance to introduce you. We went straight into the content. So how are you?
I am fine. I walked into the studio today and I said to myself, what in the world are we going to talk about for an hour?
I
mean, there's just nothing going on.
It's just like I was scrambling. So you are actually in the high risk group, but you're still here.
Yes, I am.
You still go outside.
Yes, I am.
How concerned are you about it?
I'm not wearing a mask, and I'm not concerned. I'm just using common sense and staying away from people like Michael Yaffee.
Well, you do that anyway. I mean, that's not new. It's interesting when I go to stores and stuff, I see people wearing gloves. I've seen people here wearing gloves, people wearing masks. The first thing I think of is our first responders need those. Why do you have them? But it's crazy times. It really is.
My daughter, I have a daughter who works at one of these, not markets, but combination markets in store. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm not going to mention which one. And she's working the evening shift this week. She says when she goes in at 4 or 5 o'clock, the grocery shelves are empty. People just buy everything first thing in the morning.
It's the last thing you should be doing. It really bothers me that that's happening. And I see it happen because the restaurants aren't closed. You can still get takeout and delivery. And if you go to the grocery store, just get what you need. Don't hoard. Think about somebody other than yourself. I know that's like a difficult thing, but they're not going to close the grocery stores. That's the one thing they have to keep open. So by hoarding everything, you're just making this worse for everybody. It's
The Pennsylvania governor over the weekend closed down everything in Pennsylvania. Included to be open, though, is the Charmin Company in Mahoupany, Pennsylvania, because they make toilet paper. We're not going to run out, folks.
Yeah, they can't shut that stuff down. I'm telling you, I worry about the virus. I don't want to catch it, even though I think I might have already had it. I still wonder. Because I was really sick in the beginning of February. You remember, I was out for almost a week, and it was pretty bad. It was something I never had, and the symptoms are very similar to what I'm hearing, to what COVID is. Very similar, but
you just took over-the-counter medication, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I didn't go to the doctor. I knew it was a virus, but I had fevers. It went right to my chest where I had some chest congestion. I took Mucinex and all that stuff and was able to recover. It wiped me out. It took a good 4 days to recover, and then a week later, I was still coughing. So, but the point is, I don't want to catch this. I don't want my mom to catch it. I don't want anyone to catch it. But I worry so much about the panic. Because the panic, what happens in a panic like this is first you see the hoarding, then it gets even worse pretty quickly. All you have to do is look at what happened in New Orleans after Katrina. But what happens, especially, is everybody runs to the government now to save us. We all think, okay, we'll just stay at home for indefinitely, for months, and it doesn't matter because the government will help us. The government will be there. They're not going to be there. I'm not saying that just because I'm a conservative. I'm just being realistic. They weren't there in the beginning of this. It was the government who didn't have enough tests. I'm not saying the government can't do some things. Of course they're going to do some things. Of course the Federal Reserve is going to do some things. They need to do some things. They need to pass a bill. I'm not saying that. But if you think the government is the be-all, end-all to save us and get us through this, it's not going to happen. So if you're dependent on that, stop. You need to be dependent. You need to start thinking about your families. Your churches need to get together. Friends need to get together. We definitely need to help each other out more because the government is not going to be there to save you. But I'm seeing too much eagerness out of Democrats to use this basically to promote their agenda. Now, I want to play here Trump because Trump is getting blasted for some of his comments because he's realizing that this country cannot take the economic fallout for too long. We can't. And that's you. That affects you. What's going on with the economy affects you. We don't want to make, a lot of people are saying this, but I'm going to repeat it. The cure can't be worse than the disease. But Trump did a virtual town hall as well with Bill Hemmer on Fox News, and he said this today.
We have to put the country to work. Look, you're going to lose a number of people to the flu, but you're going to lose more people by putting a country into a massive recession or depression. You're going to lose people. You're going to have suicides by the thousands. You're going to have all sorts of things happen. You're going to have instability. You can't just come in and say, let's close up the United States of America, the most successful country in the world by far.
What did he say there that was wrong? If you're actually using, put on your thinking caps, if you're actually using critical thinking skills, what did he say there that's wrong? He says he would like to open things up by Easter. He said after the 15 days, we're going to look at this, but we can't just shut down the economy indefinitely. He's getting blasted for this. What about the virus? What about the virus? He's not saying that we can't do things. He said earlier, we still have to do some social distancing. You won't shake hands. We have to be smart, kind of like what you said, use common sense.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't shut the economy down indefinitely. And there are people out there blasting him for this, saying, well, you don't care about human lives then, Trump. You don't care about the elderly because you want to open things up. And I'm thinking, do these people not understand that the economy is your life?
He's also getting blasted for using the updates at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the evening as, quote, in place of the rallies. Since he can't have his rallies, he's doing this on TV. But could you imagine what they would say, the media and the Democrats would say if he didn't do it?
I'm really trying to understand what's going on here with the people criticizing him about this stuff. Is it just Trump derangement syndrome?
Yes.
Is it just using this to political advantage?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a number. I think it's that. But like I said, I think it's also the fact that many of these leftists in the media, many Democrats, they believe it's the government's job to do all this stuff. And they're not thinking about the bigger picture. We got to talk about how the Democrats are doing that next. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
If you like Beyond Reason Radio, well, make sure to show it by liking the Facebook page at facebook.com/Beyond Reason Radio. The voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason is back now.
Wait until I tell you what Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats try to put in the coronavirus stimulus bill. It is Beyond Reason. Welcome back to the show. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm Michael Yaffee. Tom Benson is here as well. Don't forget, if you miss any of the show, and catch the podcast on the iHeartRadio app or anywhere podcasts are available. Always post it right after the show. It's on YouTube as well. So I've been kind of teasing this throughout the show, just haven't had time to play it, but I wanted to point out how some Democrats, some on the left, are using this to basically promote a socialist agenda, at least somewhat. And over the weekend, I'm watching the Sunday shows, and it just scares me how eager they are to basically nationalize industries when we don't have to. That's the honest truth. We don't have to. Trump hasn't done this. They're talking about the Defense Production Act.
Mm-hmm.
And Trump has actually enacted this, but he hasn't used it yet. So he's put the process in motion if we have to use it, but he actually hasn't ordered companies to do this. And he says we don't have to. They're all eager to do this on their own because, of course, they are. One, they want the contracts, but they want to help America as well. But listen to AOC here. She was on Jake Tapper, CNN State of the Union with Jake Tapper, and her and a lot of Democrats are blasting Trump for basically not implementing it. Here it is.
Many hospitals are already at capacity or approaching capacity, and there is kind of no real stream in sight from the federal government on where these materials are coming from. You know, companies are donating what they can. That is great. It is not enough. And the fact that the president has not really invoked the Defense Production Act for the purpose of emergency manufacture is going to cost lives.
So Trump is going to be responsible for the death of people because he didn't basically have the government take over certain industries and force them to make these products, which is completely unnecessary, and I'll tell you more why in a second. But they're just so eager to do this. One person who was really eager, Bill de Blasio, mayor of New York City, who is basically a communist and basically admits that in some regards. He wants Trump to use this now, which, by the way, if Trump implements that now, does that mean that the stuff's just going to be available tomorrow? No.
I don't think so.
It doesn't work. They're acting like once Trump implements that and the government comes in and forces these companies, they'll just be ready to go. Oh, yeah, we have all this stuff to make ventilators now. Yay! Here you go. And it's there. No. There are already companies doing this. As we speak, they're doing this voluntarily. But it takes time to make it and ship it and get it there. Oh, but it's not enough. It's never going to be enough for them. Ever. It won't be. But de Blasio also wants to get the military out there. Here he is.
The President of the United States is from New York City, and he will not lift a finger to help his hometown. And I don't get it. I don't get it. Right now, I have asked repeatedly for the military to be mobilized, for the Defense Production Act to be used to its fullest, to get us things like ventilators so people who can live who would die otherwise. Chuck, I can't be blunt enough. If the president doesn't act, people will die who could have lived otherwise.
What is it that you want?
Citizens, folks who are members of families,
right.
And we can't get action from the president of the United States.
What is it that you want the military to do immediately? What would it be a specific thing you'd want the military to do immediately?
Chuck, the military has extraordinary medical capacity of its own that's been honed in fighting wars. They can handle any situation. All military personnel who are medically trained should be sent to places where this crisis is deep, like New York. Right now, the military is the best logistical organization in the nation. If there are ventilators being produced anywhere in the country, we need to get them to New York, not weeks from now or months from now, in the next 10 days. And the only force in America that can do that is the military. Why are they at their bases? Why are they not being allowed to serve? I guarantee you they're ready to serve, but the president has to give the order.
Now, the governor of Maryland was on, because that's from Meet the Press on Sunday, and the governor of Maryland was on with them and basically called out de Blasio and said the National Guard has been mobilized in some of these areas. That's not good enough. We need the force of the military. These are people that were scared to death that Trump was going to be a dictator and declare martial law and take over. They were scared to death, and now they're complaining that Trump is not being a dictator, not mobilizing the military, not nationalizing industries. They're so eager to do this, and that's why I think, God, they're not president. Any of them aren't president right now. Because I'm afraid once they take that power, I honestly think they're going to be eager to give it back. I certainly don't think so. But Trump made a good point a couple of days ago in one of his briefings. He was asked about this, why he hasn't used this yet. He says it here. He's exactly right. Here it is.
We're a country not based on nationalizing our business. Call a person over in Venezuela. Ask them, how did nationalization of their businesses work out? Not too well. The concept of nationalizing our business is not a good concept. Basically, what are you doing? You're talking about you're going to nationalize an industry, or you're going to nationalize. You're going to take away companies. You're going to tell companies what to do. The truth is, most people, nobody would know where to start. There are companies out there that you wouldn't think of that have called us that say, we can do ventilators. We used to do them years ago, and they can do them in large quantities. If I call companies and say, you build ventilators, they don't even know what a ventilator is.
I mean, what did he say there that's wrong? He's having companies who have the materials, who want to do this, volunteering to do this and manufacture this stuff, and they're going to get it out there, and they, no, nationalize, take it over, send the military, shut everything down now. And I'm thinking, I don't want these people in power under a crisis. There needs to be action, and say Trump isn't lifting a finger to help New York where he's from. Does anyone honestly think that's true? He's been out there every single day. He's had Dr. Fauci out there. And the whole thing about him and Dr. Fauci, I'll get into that in a moment. They're trying to stir that controversy up. But Dr. Fauci was out there, and he was asked about this, and he basically agreed with Trump that there's no need to nationalize it because so many companies are voluntarily doing this. But damn, if you give them a little opportunity, open that door a little bit for them to grab power, and then you have a big crisis like this, they are eager to grab power. And that is definitely evident in Congress right now, especially with the Democrats. So apparently there was somewhat of a deal in the Senate between Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell to get the stimulus package done, to take responsibility for workers and families. Oh, that's the House Act. That's the House version, which they wanted. But the Senate had a stimulus package. They had agreed. Nancy Pelosi comes in and says, no, we want to add all this stuff in there. And this is all about, as James Clyburn said, he says, this crisis is a tremendous opportunity to restructure things to fit our vision. No. It shouldn't be an opportunity to do that. How about we just pass a bill to actually solve the problem? But this is what they wanted to put in it. Some things. This isn't everything. The bill's 119 pages long or something. This was what they wanted in the House version. This is what Nancy Pelosi wants. Imposes racial and gender pay equity provisions. Because, that has to do with coronavirus.
Oh, of course.
Diversity on corporate boards. Because, coronavirus. Yeah, it's related. Increased use of minority-owned banks by federal offices. And a grab bag of other diversity theme requirements. It increases the collective bargaining power for unions and cancels all the debt owed by the U.S. Postal Service to the U.S. Treasury.
Where'd that come from?
Yeah, see, all these related to the coronavirus. I mean, these are all related. They really care. They really care about solving this problem. For the global warming crowd, there are increased fuel emission standards and required carbon offsets for airlines. Just what they need right now when they're about to go under. They need more regulation. Yeah. Plus tax credits for alternative energy programs. For the kids, there is a provision for student loan payment deferment, and for education bureaucrats who overcharge them a $9.5 billion giveaway to colleges and universities. It gives $100 million to juvenile justice programs and suspends various aspects of enforcement of immigration law. It also has stuff on election safety and security. None of this has to do with coronavirus. They're sticking it all in there. You want to talk about not letting a crisis go to waste? I warned you about this 2 weeks ago. I said this, and it's so obvious today, and it's disgusting. It's sick. And they're saying, well, the Republican version is just a bailout for big corporations, and they don't care about the workers. You understand what workers mean, right? They're working for a business. They get paid by the business. The workers don't get to work if the business doesn't exist, unless the government's just going to employ everyone. Is that what they want? Is that the ultimate goal here? I know it is kind of maybe Bernie Sanders or something, maybe Bill de Blasio, but I mean, what is happening? This is sick. If the American people don't see how sick this is, I don't understand. And the Republicans, and these are Republicans that are not always the biggest fans of Trump, but listen to this montage here. You have Ben Sasse, Lindsey Graham, Susan Collins, Kennedy, all blasting the Democrats. Can't believe what they're doing, and I agree with them. Here it is.
We got families that are suffering. We got small businesses that are closing literally by the hour. We have doctors fighting to prevent their hospitals from being oversurged and overwhelmed. And what is Speaker Pelosi trying to do? She's trying to take hostages about her dream legislation, all sorts of dream legislative provisions that have nothing to do with this moment, and say the American public can't get access to the public health piece of legislation or the economic relief pieces of legislation unless she gets hostages that are entirely unrelated to this moment. We're better than that.
People are losing their jobs. They're losing their savings. They're losing their 401k. We think we know how to get the economy back on its feet over the next 60 to 90 days until we can get control of the virus. And some of my colleagues, they're acting like a-holes. I'm sorry, I'm not saying they mean to, but nonetheless, they're killing it.
You see this as an opportunity to do things you couldn't do otherwise. Republicans see this as an opportunity to do things that have to be done now to save lives. I have never been more disgusted since Kavanaugh. You tried to destroy a good man's life just to keep the seat open. And close friends of mine in the House have publicly said this is an opportunity to reshape the country and our image. It's not going to happen.
The Democratic leader objected to my even being able to speak this morning. Is that what we've come to? The Democratic leader objected to our convening at 9 o'clock this morning so that we could begin working in earnest. How can that possibly be controversial? How can any of us want to see millions of Americans lose their paychecks, their health insurance, their contributions to their retirement plans?
I mean, just to show you how outrageous it is what the Democrats are doing, even Mitt Romney, not a Trump fan, pretty moderate, he tweeted this out. Nothing in the Senate has shocked me until today. Standing in the way of a critically needed rescue package is irresponsible and reckless. Dems say not enough money to states. Nearly $200 billion isn't chump change. Hospitals get at least $75 billion as funds for companies. It's to keep entities that employ millions of Americans from folding. It's to save jobs. Keep this up a little longer and we will go from social distancing to social destruction. That's Mitt Romney. Unbelievable. I have to get into what the Texas lieutenant governor said that's really being taken out of context, and I'm going to defend him, honestly. We'll get to that next, and something that made Yaffee Laffee. Oh, yes, we have to have something to end the show. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Subscribe to the Beyond Reason podcast today on your Stitcher app and hear the voice of reason anytime. This is Orlando's Smart Talk Radio. Beyond Reason Radio continues now.
All right, we have to get into this stuff real quick. There's so much other stuff I wanted to get to, and we just didn't have time to get to it. But I have to talk about what Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patirck said. He's basically being accused of saying he's willing to sacrifice all the old people to keep the economy going. But I want you to listen to what he said in context, because it was pretty reasonable. He was on Tucker Carlson, I believe, last night, and here's what he said.
So I'm automatically in the high-risk pool. And I'm, as lieutenant governor, I work 12 or 15 hours a day, mostly from home now, but I travel when I need to. I'm living smart, listening to the president, the CDC guidelines, like all people should, but I'm not living in fear of COVID-19. What I'm living in fear of is what's happening to this country. And, Tucker, no one reached out to me and said, as a senior citizen, are you willing to take a chance on your survival in exchange for keeping the America that all America loves for your children and grandchildren? And if that's the exchange, I'm all in. And that doesn't make me noble or brave or anything like that. I just think there are lots of grandparents out there in this country, like me, I have 6 grandchildren, that what we all care about and what we love more than anything are those children. And I want to, live smart and see through this, but I don't want the whole country to be sacrificed. And that's what I see. I've talked to hundreds of people, Tucker, and just in the last week, and making calls all the time, and everyone says pretty much the same thing, that we can't lose our whole country. We're having an economic collapse. I'm also a small businessman. I understand it, and I talk with business people all the time, Tucker. And my heart is lifted tonight by what I heard the president say, because we can do more than one thing at a time. We can do 2 things. So, my message is that. Let's get back to work. Let's get back to living. Let's be smart about it. And those of us who are 70 plus, we'll take care of ourselves, but don't sacrifice the country.
So, Tom Benson, you're a grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of his comments? Do you think they were outrageous?
Oh, the hair rose on my arms. I was appalled. Yeah, no, not at all. It sounds pretty reasonable to me.
Yeah, he's basically just saying he doesn't want to sacrifice the entire country and the future of his grandchildren to just save, some of the elderly. He says we can do both. When you listen in context, he's like, I want to try to do both as best as we can, but he's willing to take a chance because he loves his grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
How could he say that? Except most grandparents would say the same thing. Now, I want to play this cut. I mean, I don't know if we're going to have time for the Yaffee Laffee. Maybe, hopefully we'll get it. But I want to play this cut from Doris Kearns Goodwin. Do you see that cut up there, Tom Benson? Because this really was beyond reason. She's supposedly a historian. She's not happy with what Trump is doing. So she gives a lesson from history. And it's the complete wrong lesson. Here it is.
And I think the most important thing in these kind of times is you have to trust the word of the president and you have to believe in the actions that they're taking. There was early bungling in response to the Depression by the Hoover administration. They relied on voluntary action, on state and local action. They didn't believe the federal government should be in charge of everything. And so his words lost their credibility. He said prosperity will never be helped by raiding the public treasury. FDR comes in, changes the situation entirely. His inaugural address not only says we shouldn't worry about fear itself, it says this is preeminently a time to tell the truth. Only a foolish optimist would not admit the dire circumstance. But then he says, I am prepared for action and action now. And he says, if Congress doesn't give me what I want, I need broad executive power. We are at a war. You voted for me, and I take this responsibility. So, and then things started happening. The banking crisis got help. The 100 days comes in. So why that Defense Production Act is not being used right now, as others have said, so that we can mobilize a coordinated response to this, why the Army's not being mobilized now. The bungling's already happened. We have to get to that next stage of systematic action.
I thought you were a historian. Don't you know that the Great Depression basically lasted for another, 10 years until
the war?
Until the war, because of government action? And she's like, well, if Congress can't do it, I'm just going to have executive action. This is some smart historian who's basically wanting Trump to be a dictator. Unbelievable. All right, we only have like a minute here. Let's get to something that made Yaffee Laffee. Yes, we'll try to end on a light note here. Ryan Reynolds had a funny cut he posted on social media talking about celebrities getting us through this. Here it is.
We need to work together to flatten the curve and fight off COVID-19. I think in times of crisis, I think we all know that it's the celebrities that we count on most. They're the ones who are going to get us through this. Right after healthcare workers, of course, first responders, people who work in essential services, ping pong players, mannequins. They're great. Childhood imaginary friends. Sure, like 400 other types of people. Look, stay at home, practice social distancing, wash your hands. We are going to get through this thing. We're going to get through this thing together. And I'd like to nominate these three great Canadians to spread the word. Mr. Stephen Page, Constable Terry Reynolds of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and Mr. Seth Rogen of the Point Grey Rogans.
Celebrities will get this through. If you could... The sarcasm was great there. Remember, don't panic. This is a crisis. We'll get through it together. Use common sense. But don't panic and don't allow your country to be destroyed for this. It's not worth it. But we can get through this without complete collapse in the American economy. Appreciate you listening to the show. Listen to the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. And I'll see you guys next time.